Oh, hello. We are live. Welcome to Hibernians, your one destination for sensible football chat. No histrionics, no tantrums. Thank you if you're watching live, and thank you if you're tuning in afterwards to catch up on it, wherever you are in the world. We're going to be joined in a short while by Scott, all the way from New Zealand, where I cannot get my head around the time difference. I think it's 11 hours difference, so that probably makes it 8 o'clock in the morning. So he's going to be joining shortly. Good evening to Daniel James. Great to see you again. And here we have the first question of the show. What we're going to do today is I've got loads of things we want to talk about, right? We're going to bound to want to talk about the Manchester United game. A fantastic game it was. We're bound to want to talk about, everything's on the table. But I do think that the big questions this week, if you're an Arsenal fan, great to go into an international break on the back of that win. Great to be, unbeaten so far at the start of the season. But you'd have to be living under a rock if you hadn't noticed that people want to talk about Kai Havertz. So I want to have a discussion and sort of invite Scott and his opinions on that. I did a poll on the Facebook group about the other issue, which I think is really important at the moment, which is David Raya or Aaron Ramsdale. And I know I think it's really gratifying to see that it's about at the start of the poll, it was about 75% in favor of keeping Aaron Ramsdale in the number one spot. But as the poll went on, it's kind of coming in a little bit. And I wonder if it's our sentimentality. I wonder if we just love Aaron Ramsdale so much. I saw a beautiful little clip, I think it was on AFTV, where they were showing Bukayo Saka videos of when they'd asked people if they would sell Bukayo Saka if it guaranteed us a league win. And people were saying, no, he's too important. And I kind of feel like that as well. But how great must it be if you're Bukayo Saka to see that? And how much it must inspire you. We're talking about a young man who could have gone anywhere in the world and has chosen to commit his medium-term future to the club that he's been at since he was 7 years old. But that does open up the question of Emile Smith-Rowe. I'm kind of toing and froing on this one, how much to talk about it, because I don't have any insight per se. But I can say that for those of you who've looked at the squad, there are currently 3 players in our available squad who have not played any minutes this season. The first one is Nicola Pepe. If rumours are to be believed, he looks very close to leaving. The second is Cedric, who couldn't get game time at Fulham, so it probably isn't surprising couldn't get game time at Arsenal, but all the talk is of ripping up those 2 players' contracts. The other one is Emile Smith-Rowe. So why is it that Emile Smith-Rowe can't get a game? I particularly disappointed because I thought that against Manchester United all over the place, lacking in discipline, and I'm also really happy to talk about Manchester United if you're up for it. And there's someone talking absolute sense again. We are by far the greatest team the world has ever seen. Just ask United fans, and we've known it forever. Just other people are catching up to it now. Great to see you, Johnny. Thanks for joining in. How do we feel then? I mean, I would begin, and obviously, as I said, we're waiting for Scott, but I would begin this by saying it was a fantastic performance against Manchester United. If by fantastic performance, what you're talking about is, a great feel-good win, excitement, but it wasn't quite us clicking into gear. Now, there's all kinds of reasons for that. Happy to discuss that, have my own opinions. I'm sure you do too. But if we're honest with ourselves, if that game had, let's imagine, for example, that we didn't have VAR. I think VAR demonstrated that Garnacho was offside. I can't get my head around how salty Ten Hag is being in not even acknowledging that it's technology. It was a great piece on ESPN where they were talking about exactly how it works, and it's just not a human being drawing a line on a picture. So we know that VAR called Garnacho offside because of a genius level moment, which I didn't catch in live, in the live game, but I've watched the game several times since, and there is this just absolute moment where Gabriel jumps back to make Garnacho offside. Love him. Great to see him back. But so the big issue for me, and I don't think it's going to take long to discuss Ramsdale and Raya, but I do just want to point out that we have failed to keep a clean sheet to the start of this season. Whilst I'm not under any circumstances inclined to blame Ramsdale for Rashford's goal, if you do want to live in a sort of blame culture, if you do want point fingers, I'd say Ben White needs a bit of a talking to, because he makes a really weird run back to the area. He's like he's on pre-programmed instead of running towards Rashford, knowing that Saliba's covering. But I'm not here to apportion blame. When, Saliba and Ben White are blocking the shot, Rashford gets it off anyway. You might hope. I mean, look, it would have been a glorious save. It would have been a hero save. It would have been a save that we all remembered fondly, but it wasn't to be. The response to it was fantastic. I'm absolutely thrilled that we've gone back to the kind of Arsenal that don't stay behind for long. But we didn't click. If Garnacho's offside had counted, then we could be looking at this game, in the fan base. We have one of the things that I'm really glad to be able to welcome Scott onto this, because the idea of the Gooner channel is that it shouldn't be about like histrionics. It shouldn't be about tantrums. It shouldn't be about, I'm disgusted. And I'm prepared to accept that players, well-intentioned players, will make mistakes. I do think that that's the grown-up approach. I'm going to invite Scott to join us now. I will warn you, he is in New Zealand, but he doesn't have a New Zealand accent, which is one of my favourite accents. So he has, on the other hand, another one of my favourite accents, which is a Lincolnshire accent. And please, drum roll, we welcome to the stage Scott. Please join me in welcoming in.
Good evening.
You can't get my back, can you?
Good evening. Good evening.
Careful, that becomes
Oh,
I love it when he went to Aston Villa, and the first time he was asked something, he said, "Good afternoon," and I was like, "Oh no, that's not better."
Let's be honest, he wasn't given a chance, was he?
No, and I don't think, I'm glad he wasn't. Not because I think there's this kind of thing about Pochettino as well. To go to PSG and you win a league, and everyone goes, "Oh, he's won a league now," and you go, "All right." Come on. Did he? Oh, wow. But that's, I think he's done his most amazing work in Europa League. And when I just didn't feel it, I wasn't feeling it. I wasn't feeling his type of football. So there was no midfielders.
And that was the thing, really, wasn't it? Everyone was like, it's so negative to watch.
Well, just, we had those bright moments from Guendouzi, and then, we had players in there that looked quite good. But look, just before you joined, I was telling everyone what we're going to talk about. Well, what I reckon we're going to talk about, the big points of discussion. We had a great game against Manchester United, but why wasn't it a slightly easier game against a really poor Man United at the moment? I don't want to be a Debbie Downer about it, but I do just want to discuss it honestly. I think, everyone can shout me down if they want. But for me, the two big ones are David Raya, would you start him in the next game, or Ramsdale? And then further to that, I think another key question is, I mentioned just before you came on, Emile Smith-Rowe has had literally no game time this season. The only other two players who haven't are Pepe and Cedric. So whilst I've heard the same things everyone else has heard, and I'm not in the know and I don't have any inside information, all that, you can hear Arteta go on and on about how, and this is, Johnny's just written this, ES will get game time. As Mikel says, we've got a lot of games coming up. We'll need every player, every stage. I totally believe that. I really want to believe that. My worry is, though, I couldn't think of a better game for him to play in against Manchester United. We don't have the progressive ball carriers in our team. We have great players, and we have Kai Havertz is third for producing key passes. We have Martin Odegaard, who can, not so much this season, it has to be said, but he's been unlocking teams with, clever passing movements. I just don't know how you don't play a Smith-Rowe for the Man United game.
I know, and I'd like to say as well that he's going to get plenty of playing time and everything, but there's something in me that just feels that Arteta don't fancy him. You know, he just doesn't like him. Just doesn't like his style of play.
Well, I mean, it's hard to. It would be if I was going to be like, if I wanted to be the arch contrarian, just everything you said, disagree with it. I find that impossible to disagree with, right? Because if you think to any degree that he does rate him, he would have had some minutes. I mean, look at who has had minutes in this team. Everybody but him. Vieira has done really well. Came on, did really well. So that makes it, you know.
And you think about it. Smith Rowe, he's just been to the Euros. He had a
played
really
all right. He had a really good Euros right up until the end. I mean, I thought the final game he was anonymous. I didn't. Mm-hmm. I loved watching the under-21s because I thought he was great in it, and he's one of my favourite players. So I can't pretend that I'm not going to pretend I'm objective about it. I think that if it wasn't, I would go as far as to say that if it hadn't been for Emile Smith Rowe, Arteta probably wouldn't be in a job right now. You know, so.
He saved his career with them 10 goals, didn't he?
Big time. Like it wasn't just because it wasn't just the 10 goals. It was the nature of the football. We suddenly went from had a bit of belief about ourselves. There was a point where, and this is what I think, and I said to you before coming on, and like with every Arsenal fan, every fan of football's got one opinion that they know is really controversial. And I think we'll get to ours. But it, you know, this at this point, I do think that Arteta is absolutely a breath of fresh air for Arsenal. I'm a huge Arteta fan. That doesn't mean I'm going to agree with everything he does. It was the same with every manager. It was the same with George Graham. It was the same with Arsene Wenger. Then they go and win the league. In Wenger's case, he wins a double, and I pretty much at that point was like, right, from now on, whatever he wants to do, he just does it. You know, and we haven't had that from Arteta yet.
Do you think it was time for Wenger to go when he did?
It's hard to say. Look, I mean, honestly, we were out of ideas. You know,
I think he was content that if I got fourth place, that was enough. That was it.
I think I think he was content with football, and he wasn't. I mean, he was obviously obsessed with winning to some degree.
Yeah.
But I think he wasn't one of these. I don't know if. Yeah. Look, I might be speaking out of the top of my hat now. Look, I think the game moves on so quickly. You know, I think the answer to the question was Wenger's time up has a lot to do with if you look at like Stoke. You know, when teams work out how to play against Arsenal, it can be horrifying because we're seeing a little bit of that now, by the way. We're seeing the low block being pushed out to the wide. You know, we're seeing teams set up.
Like the game when Everton beat us 1-0 and the first Newcastle game. Yeah.
Well, the Man United game, if you want to be blunt about it, like the Man United, what they were really content to do was just force us out to be creative on the wide. And we are. I mean, if you look at the goal contributions of Saka and Martinelli, I think it's 3 each, assists and goals. I know that. So we're doing it, but you really do.
It's funny with that one because we give Saka all this credit, you know, the star boy. But if you look at Martinelli's stats, they're pretty much identical to Saka's. But his goal contribution. Oh, listen, how great to have both of them. I don't think that we need to worry about which of them is better because they both play for us. I think if you said to me, would you take Martinelli out and put Rashford in? I think I think you were smoking something weird in that cigarette. You know, like. You think you'd lost your mind too.
Yeah. Like, and I don't get the whole Rashford thing anyway. I'm going to go through a few of the comments because they're building up, and I love that. Yeah, sure. Thank you so much. Thanks everyone for contributing. Johnny Pierce again with Emile Smith Rowe will get game time. As Mikel says, we've got a lot of games coming up. We'll need every player in the squad. Absolutely. Listen, and it's not just about games that are coming up. It's about situations in games that are coming up. You know, it's about who do you bring on in certain situations. Sometimes it's going to be Emile Smith Rowe. For me, this is only really a talking point. And guys, feel free to shout me down. It's only a talking point because I really thought Man United would have sort of watching what Cunha at Wolves did to Man United, just running through the middle. I thought, if you started running at Christian Eriksen, maybe you switched Odegaard to the left and put Emile Smith-Rowe on the right where he plays really well. And that's another thing that I'd be happy to discuss. But if you did that, then surely we would get some joy out of Christian. I mean, as it was, Odegaard's goal was where Christian Eriksen just thought, well, I don't really want to defend, so he just didn't. So then there's one or two injuries and he's in. I get that. I do get that. But, I mean, who has to be injured, you know? Like, who is it? Is it Kai Havertz? Is he coming in on that side? Are they going to move? I don't know. But I do agree. I agree with all these points. He'll play against Brentford in the League Cup. And I kind of hope he doesn't, because that's such a scapegoat move, isn't it? He plays
the League Cup.
That's such a tough draw. Who wants to go to Brentford in the League Cup? They're not playing their second string team. They're not doing a Spurs.
Their grounds are like going to a shopping centre anyway.
It's not a ground, it's not a ground that you want to go. Well, look, I love the Brentford fans and support Thomas Frank. Great job, blah, 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 patronising nonsense. Yeah, he must be. Come on, he must be. Right? But at the same time, I don't want him to be. I'd rather Brentford, it's not.
It's budget in the whole league.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
I get it. You can buy so much success and things like that, but you've still got to get players to gel, haven't you? And working with your philosophy.
Yeah.
It seems to be in that.
Well, there's a great. The thing I saw about it was, look, if you look at teams like Brighton and Brentford, they don't buy players that the manager wants. They buy players that fit their system, and they go and find managers who can work with those players. Yeah. And obviously Roberto De Zerbi, Frank are doing that, and you can't argue that. There is obviously a point you get to where you do have to stop selling your best players. And we've been very strongly linked with Ferguson. I just remembered Daniel James, who was the early bird, came in nice and early and asked a question. What's the good news for Tamba? And I'm assuming he means Timber. And I'm unfortunately not aware of any. I still think I think he's out for the season, isn't he?
I saw a picture of him from the Manchester United game, and he was in the tunnel and he was on his crutches.
He says, I'm back soon, guys. But
he looked positive in the photos. But a young lad with an ACL injury, we know that them injuries can go the wrong way, can't they? Yeah. And you can never recover from ACL injuries. I used to play amateur football, and I snapped my Achilles, and it was the last time I played football. It never healed properly. You can't get the rehabilitation you need, in the normal world price of a footballer. And I'm thinking to myself, gosh, obviously I can't get the treatment they did, but such a painful injury, and I never even come back from an Achilles in amateur football. So ACLs can make or break you, can't they? And you do get concerned with that one, because I heard a rumour yesterday that Jesus has fell down injured at Brazil.
Oh,
I'm not.
I didn't hear that. No, I don't know. No, stop it. No, I'm not allowing that.
That could be one of them Facebook clickbait pages,
Yeah, you know what? I'm glad it's not the transfer season anymore, because I felt like I was looking at, news aggregators every 5 minutes. I want to say a big shout out to Football Dad's Army. Great to see you, mate. And he said that ESR has great potential. I'd love to see more from him. Yeah, he's an exciting footballer. Like I said earlier, who's our progressive ball carrier? Like, who do we have that picks a ball up and runs at people? Obviously Martinelli and Saka, but they're not going to get the chances to do that if they're being double marked, or if they're being pushed out wide, or, there's a block against them.
I hate to compare Emile Smith-Rowe to anyone, and you probably cringe at this, but it's kind of like what Iwobi was like. He was a bit of a carrier.
I was so hoping you weren't going to. I don't know why, Scott. I thought you were going to say something like Merson, and I was going, yeah, exactly. And then you came up with Iwobi. Okay, all right.
Merson. Yeah, no.
Iwobi
better, doesn't it? Yeah.
Hey, listen, that came off really badly. I always liked Iwobi, and I actually put a thing on the Facebook group. This is way back. before the end of the season, saying, he's coming up for a free contract. Would you have him back? And everyone was like, no. That's a bit harsh. I know, but still, listen, at the moment, I would not Iwobi. I would start here. All right, so this takes us to the other talking point, Johnny. Thank you.
Haverts.
Great work. Yeah, because we've got to talk about it. Like, we cannot ignore this issue. I would start ESR over Havertz, but I'm biased. He's Haaland graduate, and I'm going off what he did 2 seasons ago. I think he'll get back in the team over the course of the season, 100%. I hope so. I mean, why not sell him otherwise? I don't get it. Why would you, has he doesn't make any sense, but I hope you're right. And I think there's a twofold thing. So if we get into the Havertz, just start off, Scott. What is your take on the whole Kai Havertz thing?
Firstly, it's a hard one because, I believe we're allowed to critique people. Could be Gaza. I just saw that.
Yeah.
I just must comment to that quickly. Was he the greatest British player?
Who, Gaza?
Yeah. The potential was all there.
I'm not. Yeah, I mean, he was a flair player. Listen, I think, I'm going to sidestep that issue and go, I think it might be Jude Bellingham.
Who? Greatest British player?
Yeah, I think Jude Bellingham could end up being that.
You think he's got the levels to get there?
Yeah, without question.
He does seem like he's got a big, a good head on him, doesn't he?
Well, it's like him and Declan Rice. I don't know if it's to do with the clubs or just good parenting, but they speak so well. They're humble. They're hardworking. Jude Bellingham, I don't know if you saw this, but he almost got into scrap on the weekend. And I love everything about the way he plays football. I love that he's kind of reinventing a midfield position. He isn't, at the moment he's playing at the tip of a diamond, but he does everything well. I'd
say a lot of that down to his parenting as well.
Listen, when a guy turns out really good, we can, we must always acknowledge.
Did you hear that Birmingham City retired the shirt that he wore?
I didn't hear that, no, but what makes me scratch my head most, I think Liverpool have proved a lot of these sort of pocket pundits that come out and go, well, that's their season screwed and everything. And you go, never really quite works out like that. Look at Chelsea go and buy every cool player. They get all the FIFA players and they've got the best team. And then you go, oh, hang on a minute, it's not played like that. You've got to bring people together with a sense of, what they're doing, shared vision. I think in terms of when people looked at Caicedo and Rice, all they looked at was game stats and how they'd played. And if we talked briefly, I'd love to talk more. Maybe it's for a different podcast, but I'd love to talk more about what's going on at Man United, because I think there's a very real sense there that they are not doing what Ferguson writes about in his autobiography, which is he picks players on personality, not on skill.
We should touch briefly on the dramas of Man United near the end, because there's disasters happening at the moment, isn't there?
There are. I'm really careful, Scott.
Yeah.
I'm not saying you can't talk about it. I tell you where I believe passionately that any human being in our legal system is innocent until proven guilty. And so there are things happening at Manchester United, and there are things happening at Arsenal. And that is a can of worms that I think on the full conclusion of a legal process, it's something you can discuss with information. At the moment, I don't have enough information, but so I would swerve that part of it. But looking at the Jadon Sancho thing, Mark Goldbridge has been talking about, well, he couldn't do anything else. He had to say that the kid hadn't been training well. And I was like, ask Arteta what to say, because he'd say, we just thought for this game we'd go for something different.
Like when he said with Gabriel, he basically said he knows why he's not in the team. And that just leaves it open, doesn't it?
Yeah. I mean, you could be tactically. He came out and he was salty after losing. He thought he had the game robbed from him by VAR. Nothing was fair. He had his tantrum. And in the midst of that tantrum, someone asked him about Sancho. He's obviously not happy with Sancho, and he threw him under a bus. And then, that counter riposte from Sancho is just disgraceful, really. I mean, how you can be Thank you, Johnny Pierce. You're absolutely right. More Merson than Iwobi. Scott's taking it back. Look, he's desperately backtracking. I love it.
I'm retracting that comment. I love Paul Merson, and I don't even know why I didn't think that first off. Yeah,
for the first time I saw for the first time I saw Emile Smith Rowe. I'd heard a lot about him, obviously from the youth, and I saw him at went to the Emirates for a Europa League game, and you know what it's like when you go to a match, you get to watch whoever you want, and I'll say this as well. I went to see I snuck into the Tottenham away end to watch an Arsenal game once where our best player was Stefan Schwarz and their best player was Jurgen Klinsmann. And it was like the teacher had gone on the pitch with the kids.
What a player.
Awesome footballer.
What was the last player Tottenham had that was the calibre of Klinsmann?
Oh, Gareth Bale.
Yeah, Gareth Bale.
I never liked him, and I still don't. But I mean, he's definitely a good player.
I don't think I'll ever take away that goal he scored for Real Madrid, though. The one where he jumped over the line, didn't he? Went round it. You remember it?
No, I'm not sure. I'm thinking the same one then, because there was a couple. I mean, there's a couple of goals he scored in the Champions League and everyone hated him.
Yeah, I think the game I'm on about is the one that won him the game, and he goes down the ring and he comes out of the pitch and runs back over.
It doesn't jump into my head, but I mean, I didn't watch a lot of Real Madrid back then. Good evening, guys, says Daniel James. Good evening. It's not good evening. Scott's in New Zealand.
It's morning.
And it's morning, and he's about to have his chops.
Chops. Emile Smith Rowe. I get it. We invest a lot of love for our Hale End boys. But if he did want to leave, I couldn't begrudge him.
Oh, don't. I couldn't, but I would be gutted because this is a player that, I mean, football, I think football's more than just winning anyway. I mean, don't get me wrong, I enjoyed the George Graham years, but not necessarily enjoyed them, and I loved the Wenger years at the beginning, and as it tailed off, we still had great moments. But there's a balance to be struck, and you're so right. We love the players who we've taken to our hearts. I mean, for a player to be with you from the age of 8 or 9 or 10, and I thought Balogun, when he left, he kind of classy when he left. I thought he shouldn't have left. He was making a terrible mistake, and he had a bit of a nightmarish first game for Monaco. I don't think he's necessarily going to walk into that team either. So if it's all about getting game time, maybe he should have stayed, But
the Balogun situation, that was it. I didn't. To be honest, though, I didn't see it going any other way.
Nah.
No,
I mean, it's gone well for us because, look, Eddie's playing better than we've seen him play. And I know he had that little purple patch in the middle of last season, in January last season, when obviously we were without Jesus. He's having a little purple patch now, but now he looks a bit more. He looks a bit more part of the team. He looks a bit more on it, and
I think with that situation, like probably Balogun, between Eddie, Jesus, and himself, he is probably the most like traditional striker, Balogun, and probably the best striker of the ball out of all three of them. But, you can't go out on one loan season. Yes, he got over.
Well, Scott, it's more than that. It's not just that you can't go off the one loan season. The other thing I would say to that is, I know that there is a lot of talk about Arsenal wanting to change up tactically like Pep did. But at the moment, if you're a striker look, we had the same problem with Pepe. You bring in this guy who likes to run into space, and then you look for where there's ever going to be space against us. We play against Nottingham Forest in their half. We play against Manchester United at home in their half. We go away and we play in their half. We don't really have spaces to run into. And if you were going to play Balogun, you're relying on crosses that probably aren't coming in anyway. So I just don't think he fit us, and that the style wasn't there.
Yeah. I do think it's a shame, but I do think basically the demanding of first team football at his age was a little bit naive.
Yeah, but then it's that really interesting question, because you've got Eddie Nketiah, who's kind of put up with it, not only with Arsenal, by the way, but also with England, because Eddie waited patiently to be in the England squad when it didn't look like he was ever going to be, and he's been rewarded for that. Now, you know.
You think the difference with that is because Eddie seems more humble and he's probably easier to manage? Do you think Arteta's looked, or do you think he's looked at that as well, that Eddie is far easier to manage?
I think there's a reality to the fact that we signed up Eddie on a very long-term contract and no one wanted to buy him. And we had 1 year left of Balogun's contract. I think we will never know. Well, until autobiographies come out, we won't know if Arteta rated one more highly than the other. But one's leaving, one's staying. And I don't think it was our decision that Balogun left. I think we would have happily loaned him out again. And why it wouldn't have been okay for him to go out on loan to Monaco, I don't know. We had a similar thing, by the way, with Charlie Patino, where the story was broken in April that he was not prepared to go on another loan, and he's gone on another loan. So I don't really know what's going on there.
Where is he? Is he at Swansea?
Yeah, I want to say Cardiff or Swansea. It's one of those two. Yeah, I don't know off the top of my head, but definitely not. But this is another one. You know, everyone's saying, "Oh, he's a great midfielder," but no one wants to buy you. You can't go anywhere. Lee at Football Dad's Army's gone. Bell was a left back at first. Yeah, he scored against us as a left back. Very true. Daniel James has added, "Good morning, guys." That's just for you there, Scott. We've got a crop of homegrown players: ESR, Saka, Eddie, Nelson. And is anyone producing more talent than Arsenal? Man City fans will tell you they are, but they're wrong. Because I am I don't know if you've seen it. Hopefully all of you have seen it. And if you haven't, I loved it. It's Coming Home, the Jack Wilshere documentary, the 2-part. It's on AFTV and I think it's on YouTube as well.
Is it good?
It's brilliant insight because it shows you the run to the cup. So obviously, I don't want to spoil. If you don't know by now that we didn't win the Youth Cup, losing to West Ham in the final, I can't really help you, you know. But it does show you. It doesn't show you as much, you know, like backroom but you do see the kind of pre-kickoff talks, and he does give a good team talk, Jack Wilshere, and I love him anyway, right? Yeah. And he's another one that we all love because he's one of our own.
Who's the lad that's the youth player that's at Millwall? Norton
Cuffy, Norton Brook Cuffy, yeah. Listen, if you want, I absolutely convinced by Miles Lewis-Skelly, Mario Cosa-Dewberry, and Ethan Wanyeri. I'm absolutely convinced. But there's another one that you see much more prominently in the documentary, and he's exciting as well. So that look, to the question, is anyone producing more talent than Arsenal? We've also seen Willock and Balogun move on for big bucks. And then there's Ainsley Maitland-Niles, who I still think has a good career somewhere, but I think his attitude was a problem.
Sadly, what you say about Ainsley Maitland-Niles, I've checked a bit of his Instagram about his move now, and a lot of the fans I can't remember where he's gone to. Is it?
He's a free. Last I knew, it was just a free transfer. I didn't see where he went.
Yeah, but where he's gone to, is it? It could be Leon or something like that. But a lot of the comments from the fans are, "We want better from you. You know, you weren't good enough."
Oh yeah, I mean he got relegated with Southampton. I mean, like Ainsley Maitland-Niles. Well, we had the same thing with Nuno Tavares. You know, hopefully his loan move to Nottingham Forest becomes more than just a loan move. Got a good solid core as well. Sorry.
I think the problem, you know, with Ainsley Maitland-Niles is, yes, he was a right back who wanted to be a midfielder, and he's a better right back than midfielder, but he wants to play midfield.
Well, hold on, because I think you've hit the nail on the head, right? So you've got Bukayo Saka, who comes in, and they say to him, "Oh, you've got to play left wing," and he goes, "Yeah, all right."
Play
left back. Anywhere. I just want to play. And then you've got Ainsley Maitland-Niles going, "Oh, why does the manager insist on playing me here?" And you kind of, if you were his dad, wouldn't you just want to go, "I just want you for a moment, Ainsley, I love you and your mum loves you, but I want you for a moment to think maybe the man who's spent his whole life doing this job and learning how to do this job and playing football professionally knows a little bit more about it than you. I'm just give him a chance. You know, maybe you are the smartest human being in the world, but it just feels like, and then it always comes down, people always blame young people today, and they always do that. But I do think there is this Jadon Sancho that we touched on before. who's advising him? Because I saw that Mark Goldridge was saying, you know, who's advising him. He definitely wrote that his Instagram himself, because there's grammatical errors in there which drove me mad. But he's written that himself, right? He's written it himself, and he shouldn't have. But people feel like they are and this, you see this in a fan base as well. So the video I did the other day where I took a clip of a watch along, where as soon as Man United score on Rashford's goal, someone's going, why does he play Kai Havertz? That's all Kai Havertz's fault, you know, and why Arteta needs to be sacked. And you go, who are these people? Where did they all come up from? Like, I've been going to football since I was a kid. I've had times where I didn't agree. You know, like obviously Don Howe, I didn't agree with everything he did. Terry Neal, I didn't agree. But I will say, I can't remember people taking it on themselves to be sure that they should sack someone because a goal's just gone in. And then, you know, obviously you have to eat a lot of humble pie when we end up winning 3-1. Yeah, so Johnny Pierce here is Ethan Nwaneri and Miles Lewis-Skelly, both 16. I tell you what, and not only that, but Ethan Nwaneri has committed to signing a when he's not an apprentice anymore. We are keeping hold of players that are Miles Lewis-Skelly is just. I think Cozier Dewberry. I'm going to go out on a limb here, and this is going to be recorded for posterity. So if I'm completely mad, you can all laugh at me anyway. But Cozier Dewberry could be a bit Thierry Henry for me. I really, really like these players. I don't mean I like them a little bit. I like them a lot. These are great players.
There's an Arsenal fan on YouTube. I don't know if you found his page, but he puts all the youth highlights up.
Oh, no, I don't have to. But then it's good on AFTV, on Arsenal.com. They show them all. It's great. And I watched the women's game against Norrköping as well. And I'm not ashamed of the fact I don't really watch a lot of women's football, but I honestly wouldn't know when to fit it in. And of course, I always want to see every Arsenal team do well. And perhaps I should watch more of it. That's a question for the rest of you, I would ask. How about you, Scott? Do you watch much of the women's?
No.
And it's not like that's not a political thing for me. I think that, I'm sure there'll be time in the future to talk about the politics, especially around, Spain's Spain's women's victory. Jack was brilliant. Unfortunately, injured a lot. That's an understatement.
Glass ankles, Jack.
That was an understatement. I mean, there is this issue about do we play these players too young? I tell you, who's a really good example of this, Yuri Tielemans. Sean, who sometimes does a show with me, was a really big advocate of we should sign Yuri Tielemans. And I wasn't feeling it at all. I think he's a great sign. But I think he's just played too much football. I think you just get to...
I think over the last year as well, Tielemans, obviously with getting relegated with Leicester, his game had really suffered. And to me, hate to say it, but he seemed to have put on a bit of weight.
He looked sluggish. He doesn't look. Come on, he comes back from. I think there are teams where he doesn't get inside on that. But then when we played them away and we marshalled that game really well, but a lot of it was that Maddison was out, not Tielemans. Tielemans did play some part in the game. I just thought he'd lost a lot of. Yeah, I think the ship had sailed for him.
The Haverts.
Right. So okay, let's try. There's this kind of joy. I find it really interesting how people argue now. So they'll go, I don't watch stats. I watch with my eyes, and my eyes tell me he's a good player. It goes, well, who are? And I just want to say to those people like Lee Gunner, well, who are you? Like, where's your eye come from? It's a magic eye. Do you know what I mean? Like, you've watched football. I've watched football. I'm not interested. We're all allowed to have our opinions. But then when you come out and go, oh, he's got the third most key passes in the team. They go, that's nothing. And you go, no, it is something. It is something. I mean, everybody is praising Erling Haaland because he's got loads of goals. They're not going, he's got loads of goals. Now, actually, 14 of those were on a plate from him from Kevin De Bruyne. 9 of them were penalties. No one does that. But I think if you look at the work that Kai Havertz does, let's say, for example, you were just comparing him with Granit Xhaka. Right? So if you just said Kai Havertz is a replacement for Granit Xhaka, Declan Rice is a replacement for Thomas Partey because Thomas Partey is not the world's most reliable player.
No.
If you say that and you go, okay, so how is Kai Havertz doing relative to how Granit Xhaka did in his 7th season? So how is Kai Havertz in his first 4 games doing compared to... And you'd say, well, I'm prepared to cut him some slack. Kai Havertz is more tackles per game, wins all, Granit Xhaka never won aerial duels. Kai Havertz does, but he wins twice as many ground duels. And so if you look at every metric I can imagine, key passes, he touches the ball less often than did Granit Xhaka. But in every other conceivable metric, he hasn't been our worst performing player. Ramsdale's been our worst.
Would you agree he slows the game down?
Yeah, no, I would agree with that. But I would also say that we're yet to see. I think, look, one of the central problems, and this is what I really laugh about, because in the current modern sort of hype about the current hype about, you know, Kai Havertz, one of the things that gets me most about it is people speak as if they know they don't know what they're talking about. Oh, he's put Thomas Partey in at right back because you can't find any other way to play Kai Havertz. No, right? There is another theory here. And the theory goes like this. Declan Rice is a left-sided defensive midfielder. He likes to play that. In his heat maps from the games we've seen him in, he arguably spends a bit too long in that area of the pitch, which means if you've got Zinchenko inverting to that position and Declan Rice in that position, you become cluttered. So what if you could find a way to invert from the right? Yeah. Now, if you... Sorry, go on.
I think, and because Zinchenko was not there on the left, we didn't invert from that side. So that is the reason for doing that as well, isn't it? So
yeah. So the reason, but my point, so that I can prove it now, can't I? So let's say you were one of these people who said, "Oh, he's changed the formation to get Kai Havertz in, and that's why Gabriel's been dropped and Thomas Partey's on the right wing." So okay, well, Kai Havertz played against Man United, Gabriel was centre back, and Ben White was right back. So it's obviously possible.
Yeah.
What you saw in that game though is Zinchenko isn't fully at his best yet, but him and Declan Rice were far too close together. You know, so we weren't really making the most of the gaps in the middle of the pitch because they were there. And we should have been running rings around Eriksen and Casemiro, and we weren't. But the Kai Havertz situation, if you say to people, why are you so upset about Kai Havertz? He's a replacement for Granit Xhaka. I mean, who was happy with Granit Xhaka a couple of years ago? So let's just give him a chance. But then they think that they have to be angry about it because we're not clicking just yet. And because he's had to make all these changes to Partey and to Gabriel. Now, I don't think he made the changes to Gabriel and Partey because I think it was because of Timber's injury. I think when we thought we had a player that could invert on the left and right, then as soon as Declan Rice, look, I could easily see a day where we play Partey and Rice as a double pivot. We might have to if we get to Real Madrid in the Champions League. There'll be games where it's possibly important to do that. But the Kai Havertz debate really upsets me because I always was brought up to know once they've got the shirt on, they're your players, man. Yeah, look, don't get me wrong. You can hate a player. I love Perry Groves. Not everyone loved Perry Groves. I do live in a Perry Groves world. Join me. It's a wonderful lunatic place, right?
There's a player in Havertz. There is a player there.
Yeah.
I think, when I look back to him when he played for Dortmund, you could see that their system was more tailored around to play for Havertz. And he predominantly kind of played the 10 role, didn't he? For Dortmund.
For Borussia. Listen, he was what? He was 20 years old.
Because I was watching this analysis video, and they were saying what was the problem with Havertz, and they were showing how he played at Dortmund, where he had so much.
Leverkusen. Sorry, Lever. It was a Bayer Leverkusen.
Yeah. They were showing how he had all this space, to work around, and everyone kind of worked around him. But he's never going to be that. I could see going to Chelsea. That was never going to happen there. He was never going to be able to get that freedom. And did he have that much freedom because the German league's slower?
No, I mean, actually, funnily enough, I can speak to this. I do watch quite a bit of German football. It's not slower. It's a transitional game. Yeah. German football and English football are not alike. If you look at, obviously, Bayern Munich skews this for a lot of people because Bayern Munich will play with possession, but they've had their struggles in the last few years. what you'll see at Dortmund, what you see at Leipzig, which, Man City have obviously exploited really well, is that they are quick, high pressing transitional teams. And for that kind of game, if you do find more, because they're not playing midfielders in the same way, I mean, if you look at, I think, look, I don't think I'm going out on a limb when I say that I don't see German football as in the same category as English football. We, they do tackle hard, but they are still more tactical. They are more patient in build up. I'm going to read that because you said this earlier, Johnny Pearce. I'm sorry, I don't want you to feel like I didn't see it or was ignoring it. And also, he's just put in Patino's 3 assists in first 4 games for Swansea. He had a really good start to his Blackpool season as well.
The problem with Patino is, obviously, there's a talent there, but at this stage in where Arsenal are, he's not the profile midfielder we need. We need somebody that can hit the ball running right now. Like we haven't got time to breed him through at the minute. Does that make sense?
Yeah. No, it really does. And I think that that's why it surprised me he was so steadfastly determined to leave. Maybe he has changed his mind because obviously he is on loan. Lee's sent a thing going, we'll do a show with you soon, Dan. Hope so. Biggest trigger on YouTube, Lee Gunner. Yeah.
I don't watch him.
What is wrong with me? There's something wrong with me, isn't there? Because every now and again, if life's too good, I go, I must just watch a bit of Lee Gunner. I love to be triggered by the man. I think that's what his whole shtick is, isn't it? It's like,
well, to the point is, there's idiot fans in all fan bases, but his whole thing is just to slag off the fan base
and the players and the manager. And to go on, he was like 10 years old when we won. And, I think what's brilliant about Arsenal, I'm just saying this now because I didn't want to, what I'm about to say may sound different from that. I love that, we have fans all over the world. Yourself in New Zealand, I know that's not the same, but but I love that people fall in love with Arsenal. And you could be anywhere and fall in love with Arsenal. You can be in Indonesia, you can be in Nigeria, you can be anywhere and fall in love with Arsenal. I'm amazed at the amount of fans we have in Brazil. I love, not just because of our players, actually before that. So, but when he talks about Arsenal, it's like he knows what he's talking about because he saw the Invincibles. And I'm like, you're 10 years old when they were playing. I went to every home game in the Invincibles. It was brilliant. You take for granted seeing Dennis Bergkamp, Thierry Henry and Pires and people like that. You take Lundbergs for granted. You take things for granted you shouldn't ought to take for granted. But I remember before all that as well, I remember going to see Arsenal and we had Rocky Rocastle in the midfield and his main job was basically tackling back. Under George Graham's formation, he was amazing at it. But there were rare occasions where he would take on Brian Robson and Paul Ince in the midfield and Chipper Schmeichel. That was the odd kind of one-off, once in a blue moon. So I think we nostalgize football. I think the Lee Gunner's problem is he thinks he knows more about football than other people. He's never been put on the line. I heard him talking about, Edu doesn't know what he's doing in transfers. He goes, but you do you, Lee? Have you ever done any £1 million transfers? Have you ever done a business deal in the multi-millions of pounds with 2 sets of lawyers and agents? I mean, like, we're ready. Anyone can come out and go, they're not doing what I want, because what I want is I want us to win the league. And so whatever they're doing.
Not exactly like buying a pack of chewing gum, is it? It's a bit more than that.
I just want to remind Lee Gunner almost every time I listen to him, it's like, we're not the only team that didn't win the league last season.
I think a question earlier, Johnny Pearce said we need cover for Saka before he goes. I would argue that we have perfect cover and his name's Trossard. And he can play everywhere on the front line.
I think, I think you'll probably... I'm sure Mikel is busy tonight, but if he isn't, he's probably going. Or Jesus. I don't worry about. I did want to see us. I mean, Johnny, I'm going to agree with both of you now. Oh, he's in Oz, so he needs to get cracking for work now. Oh man, well, thank you so much for making us part of your morning routine. Absolutely brilliant to have you with us. And we've got the Antipodes well covered. Look, New Zealand and Australia. This is what I'm saying. Isn't this brilliant? I don't know.
I love Trossard. Yes, we have seen him on the right once, and he probably does work better on the left. But
he's both-footed. I don't see why it'd make a difference.
I don't get this. We need sack cover. You know.
Well, I think it was in the kind of Christmas transfer window, not literally, but you know how the transfer window feels like, oh, and we want one of those, and I want one of those. In my dream scenario, it would have been a Moussa Diaby or somebody that could come in. But the reality, the problem you're dealing with is that you're blocking off the pathway for other players, and you are probably Ansu Fati, for example. Boy, did I want us to sign him.
I remember.
I can't believe.
I remember.
I can't believe.
In one of your comments, and you were highly rating him, and I was just like, avoid him, injury records, avoid him.
No, forget. No, the injury record is really not his issue. You know, his issue is game time. The injury record has been fit. I mean, he's not injured. And we'll see either that. Look, I think he's 20 years old. He's done his rehabilitation. He was unlucky with injury. The injury was handled really badly by Barcelona. It's not the injury. He's 100% clear. But the problem is he's not getting game time at Real Madrid. Sorry, Barcelona. Barcelona?
I seriously laughed when Tottenham lost that deal, though. They can't.
Well, how about we get David Raya for 27 million and they offered 40 million?
I don't get that one, do you?
No. Well, yeah, I do, because you could offer me 100 million and I wouldn't play for Spurs. But still, I do think that on some level, they're just a two-bob club and everyone's worked them out and they're rubbish and they've got a rubbish manager. And, you know, although I'm going to say this, sacrilegious though it is, I love Ange Postecoglou. I think he's fun. He's not fun at all, but it's so nice to actually, it's nice to have an Australian accent as a football manager. And I don't know why, but I just love, they take sport properly seriously in Australia.
He's a straight gunner, Ange's.
He's a
straight gunner. He says it.
Totally. And I love that about him. And there's that clip of the rousing speech he gave to the Australian men's team. That no one ever says they got battered after that speech, but I love him a little bit because I think his work cut out for him and he's not going to be able to do it under Daniel Levy and the ENIC board any more than anyone else can.
I think that's the problem. You can see that Ange, he plays exciting football, but you're right. Levy is going to suck the life out.
And that kind of exciting football it's whether you can sustain the energy and enthusiasm that brings it. And I think they're going to have some tough times, but they're doing quite well.
We're terrible, Dan. We actually started to talk about Havertz and we just went off on a tangent again.
But I think that I think everything I wanted to say, the Havertz situation is, look, first and foremost, if you're a fan of a football club, why would you be so quick to fall out of love with a player? Is it to do with the aesthetics of it? Is it because Declan Rice is an objectively, sort of like what people think is a handsome man and he speaks well and he's smiling and he does all the right things and it's all like politicians do. Havertz is a grumpy looking German who no one really understands the position he's in. It really divides the sort of intelligentsia from the normal fan base. People who don't want to hear about.
I can see why we went for Havertz. There was the conversation a while back that we were going to go for DCL, Dominic Calvert-Lewin from Everton. I know. And it's that profile you can see he's looking at. He's looking at that tall player, you know what I mean? You can see what he's trying to do there. Obviously, I want Havertz to do well. I liked what I saw of him at Dortmund, but I have to also be honest and say I wasn't impressed with what I saw at Chelsea.
None of us were. How could you be? How could he didn't play well for Lampard? He didn't play well for Tuchel. He didn't play well for Lampard again. He didn't play well for Potter. But who did? Yeah. Who did play well for him? Who's the standout player in Chelsea's last 2 seasons? Who's the best they've had?
Thiago Silva.
Right? I mean, what does that tell you? Yeah, Thiago Silva, world-class footballer, Thiago Silva, living legend, man of steel. Like, he's an incredible footballer. He's like 38, nearly 39 now, and he's their best player. What happened to Pulisic? What happened to Havertz? What happened to these players? What happened to them? What did they do to them?
There's something rotten at Chelsea, isn't there?
Yeah, well, it's because they're a cursed club and they deserve to be. And I don't think they should ever have been allowed to play amongst. Listen, I'm too old. When one of the things, I had a really good conversation earlier with a friend at work, and he was saying, you see some of the people who support Chelsea now, and you just want to go to them. Do you know who you're supporting? Do you understand the history of Chelsea? Do you know what filth that team? I stood with Chelsea fans because I used to go to matches. I used to go to Tottenham, and I used to just, when Arsenal weren't playing, I'd go. And I had a good friend who's a Chelsea fan, and I remember going with him to a couple of games. And it's the things you used to hear in the stands you didn't hear anywhere else. You just didn't hear them anywhere else. They were absolutely disgusting. And, we could wax lyrical about that. There's loads of stories. They've named one of their hospitality suites after a player who was drummed out of his own club by right-wing fascists. And so, when people talk to me about Chelsea, I don't think of glamour. I don't think of glitz. I don't think of champagne football. I think of of an experience where that club tolerated a type of pestilence in their fan base that is really, you can talk about kick racism out of football all you like, kneeling isn't going to do as much good as just literally life banning and all that. But in those days, it wasn't even talked about at Chelsea. They didn't even mention it. There are people, I know, I've said more than I wanted to anyway, because it's not my place to dig up the past. And I'm not suggesting for a moment Chelsea still have any of those problems. But when I see someone like Rory Jennings, who I really respect, talking about, the soul of Chelsea, I'm going to go, you want to get rid of that soul and build something brand new, because it was rotten, desperately rotten. And I hope that I get picked up on this by Chelsea fans, because I was there, I saw it, and I'm not pretending it wasn't like that. And I never, and this is one of the, if we never win another trophy, and God, I can't believe I just said that, but I will always be proud of Arsenal for being a cosmopolitan place where I never saw that. And maybe it was just before my time. I can't. Maybe I'm as naive as maybe it was everywhere. But that's a big difference for me.
So there's probably no surprising that Havertz didn't have a good time at Chelsea.
No,
but
cursed club. It should be torn down and the earth salted, as far as I'm concerned.
I 100% Dan. I want him to work because he plays for my team.
Yeah,
but I'm not going to deny that I am concerned, and I probably think the 65 million could have been spent on James Maddison. Yeah.
Yes. Right. Yeah. I mean, it's funny because I hadn't thought that until earlier today when I got home from work and I was sitting in the bar.
If we'd have paid 40 million for Havertz, it would feel a little bit better for me. But the 5 million price tag is so much money, and I think the problem at the moment is if Arteta keeps playing him, it's going to destroy him. I think he needs to be gradually brought into the team off the bench. 20 minutes.
But then you say that, and I actually 100% agree. But just to play devil's advocate, I will say he brought him straight into the Community Shield in that false nine position. He played really well. He was a big part of it. It's one big part of the reasons we won it, in fairness. But I think now you're in that doomed position where you drop him, it looks like he's failed. I would ask any of these people who are on his case, the way they're on his case. Do you think it's helping him play better, or do you think it's making him play worse? His confidence is shot. We've
had comments, and I've called him the walking zombie, or I've called him the get back in your coffin car, but I don't mean anything nastily. Like I would never. You know what I mean, don't you?
Like just in fun, like I just called you a zombie for. Oh mate, come on. Yeah, listen, you said it, you wear it. Like that's that's the kind of thing we say. Listen, there are players. Went right in on Ivan Toney because I was like his comments about us.
It's hard to project how you're saying it on message. I'm kind of saying it sarcastically, I don't want any hate against the guy, but you're right. The guy's confidence is completely broken, and I think it's a serious gamble that Arteta bought a kind of broken player. And there is part of me, you know, and obviously I back Arteta. I'm not a complete fanboy. I'm like 75%, 80% with him. You know, I still have slight doubts.
I think I'm more than that, and it's funny because I still don't think of myself as a fanboy, but I vividly remember listening to the Arse cast on Spotify before our game against Chelsea on Boxing Day. It was the week before. We'd lost 3 games in a row or something stupid like that. We looked bereft. Chelsea were, under Frank Lampard, but they were looking good. Willian was in the team and he wouldn't drop him. And I just remember listening to the guys on the Arsecast talking about it and going, you know what it is? No massive company would appoint a CEO who'd never done it before. We've got a manager who's never actually done this before. He's fallen out with Ozil. He's fallen out with everyone. He's not like the German contingent at the time had all spoken about him like he doesn't know what he's doing. And he's...
Yeah, sorry, Karen.
And he won me over. And that Boxing Day match against Chelsea was the beginning of something. It was much more than just beating Chelsea. It was the way we played. And then we've seen it in glimpses. And then we had last season. So for me, my major criticism of him was that he didn't have enough experience. He's had 3 years. When you listen to Lee Gunner talk about it, you think it'd be 30 years. We all know we're old enough to, speaking on our behalf, we're old enough to remember Alex Ferguson. I vividly remember the guy that turned up with a banner that said "Time to go, Fergie" or something like it. And
I bet he's not. I bet he's not eating that banner now, is he?
He's still got it, and it's really funny because he did a little news piece on him, and I thought it was really sweet. And he was like, "Oh yeah, of course, I totally regret it now." He's like, but we're entitled to your opinion as fans. You also have to be humble when you're wrong. I think that if we give Arteta 6 years and we haven't won the league, then it's time to go. But what everyone wants to do is they want to get rid of him and bring the guy in who's going to win the league in one season. And I don't think that guy's out there.
Sadly, I do watch some FT and things, and there's I don't know if you know Julian on there. Julian's a little bit like bitsy guy, and he never see. But he made one comment on there, which I actually do agree with. He says the problem is people want microwave football players ready to go.
Yeah. Because they play FIFA and they go and buy a football, they buy a player and they put him in. There's no emotions, there's no human,
Well, I bought Declan Rice and Casado on FIFA, and I paid 80 million for the pair of them.
Right, well, you're the next man for the job then.
Yeah, no,
I wouldn't. But honestly, I'm really much more. I'm not into tactics. I'm getting into them. I'm finding them more fascinating. But I'm not. I can't talk with any expertise on the tactics of it. But I'm very much more interested in the players as human individuals. I have a long history of building teams and having to work on the psychology of when a person's in one mood. Teams are affected by, I used to have to do a kickoff in front of every shift and in front of like a handful or sometimes much more people to get them up for the work that they're about to do. Yeah. And you look around you some days and you see everyone's up for it.
This is how it is,
Yeah.
The days of the old days and that we had like, just get up, all this and that. But with sports science, we know a lot more about how the body works and everything. And, and I think the mental health is a seriously big part of the game, and we have to address it. We are giving young 17, 18-year-old kids abundances of money. How do you think it's going to now? There has to be some kind of, system in place as well, because a lot of these players fail.
Yeah. Well, yeah, huge number. And that's something that it's hard for anyone to hear. And the clubs, I think, do more than they've ever done to try and mitigate that. But look, it's built into the sport. It's built into only if the very few make it. For every sacker that makes it, you're reading the list of players who are going out or whose careers are now over. Great players. When you look at Jack Wilshere in that documentary, he's talking about, he names a couple of players who I was reading another biography. I think it might be Romford Pele. It was Ray Parler's autobiography. And he talks about some of these players. He was amazing. He was this, that, and the other thing. But you've never heard of them.
Yeah.
So there is so much more to it than just the stats.
What is the percentage of the players that come to a team at 8, 9 years old, what's the percentage of them succeeding? It must be 2 or 3. I don't know.
No, it's way less than that. It's 0 point. Yeah, it's less than 1%. It's a tenth of a percent if it's that. Think about it for a second. They come at 8 years old, right? Usually 40 or 50 in an intake.
Yeah.
Name. You can, and so in any particular group, you might have 120 players. You'd be lucky if one of them makes it. I mean, it depends what you mean by make it. Do they go on to have good careers elsewhere? Yeah. Yes. I mean, I could go through that. I could almost say one of the reasons I love the academy at the moment, and I love Wilshire being part of it. I love Per Mertesacker being part of it. I love that we're bringing our own back together.
This is what I've always liked about us guys as well. Freddie Lundberg being involved, Steve Bold in the past. I love that
George Graham. George Graham, no one thought he was going to be a manager, and he went to Millwall and he came to Arsenal, and he was, you could make one of these days we should do an open line. Everyone comes in. Who was the best manager of all time? Because Arsene Wenger, but he used Georgie's players. It was. Can you imagine Arsene Wenger had to put together a team? He's new to English football, but he's got Steve Bold, Tony Adams, Lee Dixon, Nigel Winterburn, David Seaman.
Yeah.
Right. Well, that's sorted then. Better go and get Patrick Vieira, Manu Petit, Gilles Grimondi. And
a little bit of Silvino on the side. Remember him?
And then, I do remember him because it was one of the things that made me really laugh about who was the latest transfer that I did a thing about. But everyone was going, "Oh, they're going to sign this Brazilian kid," and I looked into it and I go, "The kid hasn't even got a passport. You can't even play in this country." You don't think Edu's making that mistake again after he got turned back at the airport? Do you know what I mean? Like seriously, Silvino was playing for us on a fake passport. That's why we let him go.
Was it?
Yeah. Yeah, he was. We didn't want to lose him. He had to go because it was a sooner or later they were going to come and knock him. We'd have lost all the money on him.
Because he was only there for about a season, wasn't he?
We've got Silvino. We've got. I used to love him. Of course I did.
He was good, wasn't he?
He was. Well, all right. I mean, I grew up with Nigel Winterburn as our left back, so suddenly it was like, don't get me wrong. I love the Nutty Boy still. He's one of, he's an icon.
But when you went from Winterburn to Silvino, it's almost like getting a Roberto Carlos, wasn't it?
It was just different gravy. I mean, the guy could take. I mean, he was everything. He was like, So yeah, but I think when it comes to players like you were just saying, everyone's got this idea that you go out and buy a player and they're ready made. When it comes to players like Kai Havertz, or for that matter, Dennis Bergkamp, or for that matter, Thierry Henry, when they came to the club, their debut wasn't a hat trick.
No,
right?
And I remember Thierry Henry was pretty much hitting the clock tower with his kicks.
Yeah, you remember? He was not sure. I mean, it was a weird one that anyway because he just had enough at Juventus and it was a terrible place for him to be. But when he came, and obviously. He had got his start under Arsene Wenger at Monaco, and he had played him on the wing, but he had Jardel up front. He had too many up front players already, so it was like a necessity thing. But he talks about it. He says when Arsene Wenger said he was bringing him back, even he wasn't sure he wanted to play up front. He's not really a striker, so he got a bit of abuse, And it's funny, isn't it? 11, 12 million quid, and people going, "Oh, what a waste of money," That's true of Dennis Bergkamp, not Arsenal fans. I think there is something we have to investigate in our fan base, in ourselves, in our hearts. If a guy looks good and speaks well, we give him longer, than Kai Havertz. Kai Havertz, we don't like the look of him. He's not one of us. He's not someone that you'd be proud of, And I think that can change. It will change, I hope. But for me, sorry, go on, Scott.
I bloody want him to work, mate. But I'm not going to rip the shit out of him. Apologies. But
no, swear words are cool, by the way.
I'm concerned that I know when we're going to go back to that situation at Chelsea, but I'm concerned that everything I've seen him do, yes, he can do everything, but I don't think he can do everything very, very well. I think he's very average at everything.
So explain to me then, and this isn't me saying you're wrong. I'm interested. Explain to me then why he wins more of his duels than almost any other player in the Arsenal team. Why does he have more key passes than any other player in the Arsenal team?
But the next thing to that is, if he wins all his duels, but what does he do with it?
Key passes. The third highest number of key passes. It's what. Do you remember the ball he passes to Martinelli at Palace?
Yeah.
And then Martinelli's still in the sort of ring rusty from the pre-season, and he does nothing with it. Well, if he scores it, then that's an assist. It's one of the hardest things about football is if you give somebody a ball on a plate and they sky it over. Look at the Chelsea Nicholas chance on the weekend where I think it was Sterling puts the ball on a plate for him and he skies it. I mean, I don't even know how you kick it over from like inside the 5-yard area, but like he skies. Now, what do you say to Sterling? I'll do something different so that you can't put it more on a plate. A key pass becomes an assist when the other player influences it. I'm not going to sit here and pretend that Kai Havertz has had a great start to the season. But what I can say with confidence is he has not had the worst performances of the season.
No.
The worst player so far this season for, analysing key metrics of the game, using 3 or 4 different averages and comparing them and aggregating them, Ramsdale, without question.
Yeah. Have you seen that the stats of goalkeepers? He's at the bottom.
Yeah, I mean, he hasn't. I'm talking about stats in our squad. I mean, he's the worst performing player in our squad at the moment. And the squad have pretty much all had game time, so he's compared with everyone. That can be. There are lots of things can skew that. I get that,
I don't think he's going to lose his position right now, but I think it's a serious threat because
must be.
I do think that David Raya is a far better goalkeeper.
Yeah, I mean, I hate to. I can't say. I don't know. And I agree with everything you're saying. And I think that this is the same challenge that Arteta has with Emile Smith-Rowe and Kai Havertz.
But when we go online and we look at these reels that are made of all players, that it's always best.
What's the point? Yeah, look, I've joked about it so many times. Like, watch my highlights reel. There's me chipping David Seaman from the halfway line. It's like it's just.
You're not gonna put crap highlights up if you're trying to sell the player to the fan base, are you?
You know what? I just think that when I first heard about Mykhailo Mudryk, because I'll come out and say it. I don't watch a lot of Ukrainian football.
Anyone? Does anybody?
No, of course not. No, people don't watch French football either, but they're going on about Balogun because he did so well in the French Ligue 1. It's like, who outperformed him? Lacazette.
Yeah, this is where I always go with that one as well. And then I've also said, 20 goals in the French League. Do you really think that's 20 goals in the Premier League?
Well, and I tell you who would agree with you, Ten Hag, because he feels like 9 goals. Rasmus Højlund, I think he looked good against us. I'm quite keen to see him play, but he scored 9 goals in a Serie A season, and he's worth 72 million.
Well, the thing is with that, when they brought him on, you could just see how spent Martial is.
I am doing one of the things about the international break is it does give you a chance to sort of step back from daily reacting to things. And I am really interested from a neutral as I can be. I had a grudging respect for the Man United who kept us from even more silverware. The 99 team, there's so many good. I mean, and also I will say about Gary Neville that, it's easy to criticize him for his comments last season. I can think of very few men alive.
Right, though.
Yeah, but this is what I'm saying. He's right because he knows what he's talking about. Because if you said, name someone else who's done a three-peat twice. Name someone else who he said in his own words. He said, the reason I thought it'd be hard for Arsenal was because I remember it was hard for me. People, they were talking about, our complacency against Southampton. And Gary Neville says, it's not complacency. They're scared. These are young men who wanted this all their lives since they were 8 years old. They've gone to bed early every night. They've eaten well. I mean, look at them. They're fantastic physical specimens in a way that footballers weren't in the 80s. These are kids who have taken it seriously. Bukayo Saka, 13 years of dedication, hard work. And Tony Adams talked about this when he was in the 89 champions side. And there's a brilliant piece in the book by Amy Lawrence where he's talking about it. And he says he was in the bath after the game with David O'Leary. And David O'Leary said to him, I think we can...
David O'Leary. Sorry, I just
I know it's fruity, isn't it? You're allowed to get excited by that
idea. What a player!
Well, both of them, yeah. I mean, like, what do you want, you know? But they were both, and he talks about it. He says there's a point where David O'Leary said to him, "I think we can do this," and he was like, "Yeah, of course we can do it." But then as you get near the end of it, you know what it's like being a young man. You kind of go, yeah, of course we'll do it. It's be easy. Why don't anyone? But then you suddenly get it. It's in your hands and it slips away. And then, of course, everyone was like, you bottler, ha, ha, ha. And you go, all right, well, all great athletes, all great sports people were bottlers at one point. Roger Federer talks extensively about not being able to transition from a great youth tennis player to a great professional tennis player. He struggled mightily. Champions are forged by failure. They are not created with everything going well for them.
Yeah, it's about getting back on that.
It's about learning. Odegaard, for me, sums this up beautifully. Yeah. Hated his summer. He was like, I can't do that again. Alex Ferguson.
Was you impressed with him when he came on loan? Not particularly.
Yeah. Well, hugely. Yeah, I couldn't believe. I was angry he was on loan because I was like, you're making me fall in love with the player and then he's going to leave and I'm not going to be able to cope with it. He was exactly my kind of player. Exactly my kind.
I've watched a few videos. I think you mentioned them the other day. Is it TFI or whatever they are? Oh, they do like analysts.
Oh, TIFO. Yeah, no, I mean, TIFO, brilliant. TIFO IRL, absolutely brilliant.
I've watched a few videos where Odegaard's come from as a young kid. The guy has a winning mentality.
I just love him. Love him. I love him. I love him for his dedication. I love him. He's that Bergkamp-esque kind of level dedication.
I know he's not the profile player of Beckham, but he's work, as in style. But I think as a professional, he gives me Beckham vibes because we know Beckham was
Look, I hate to say it because he's Chelsea, but Lampard. Lampard, the first day he got a call up, he was at his local park practicing sliding tackles without a ball.
I think sometimes when you look at that, it's like, why is this person a football player? Because they had no, and I'll probably swear here, because they have no fucking choice. It's their destiny.
Yeah, I mean, listen, on this subject, I think there is a myth of talent. There is a myth. Of course, there are aptitudes that, the special gifted players appear to have those. But the reality is that, hard work beats talent every single time. And if you and one of my favorite moments in the transition to the new Wenger system was Bergkamp had just done something really special. Ray Parlour was being interviewed after a match. And he goes, tell us what it's like. He goes, he's different. He's different levels. He's brilliant. He's a brilliant player. And the funny thing about him is he's so much better than the rest of us, but he still stays late in training.
Yeah.
And it was like listening to that going, don't you understand what you're saying? Like the reason he's better than you is because he works harder than you.
And you show. Like Thierry Henry always said, they said, why were you as good as you are? He said, because of Dennis Bergkamp.
Yeah. Ian Wright, look at what it did. I mean, listen, the players that work hardest, you give me talent. And what does it mean? It means that, don't get me wrong, when talent and hard work combine and mentality come together, if you've got a Lionel Messi, I just think there are some players who are standout once in a lifetime players. But for the great players like Bergkamp, I love Johan Cruyff said famously about Dennis Bergkamp. He goes, there isn't one kind of footballer, but when I close my eyes and I think of a footballer, it's Dennis Bergkamp.
And when you look at Johan Cruyff, didn't he do all that with just one foot?
Yeah, he did. And smoking during the halftime interval and never ran anywhere. And he never ran anywhere. And he didn't even like talking tactics. And I just...
Paul McGrath Remember Paul McGrath?
Yeah, Paul McGrath. Well, he couldn't. He's got no knees left. You know, and also they were always pissed, weren't they? So like, there's only so far you can train when you've always had a skinful. I think. Look, if you look at the Ronaldo in his interview, I think it was before the Piers Morgan interview, but it might have been that really incendiary Piers Morgan interview did. It was brilliant because he was talking about players today don't have the dedication. He had the dedication.
I respect Ronaldo for what a player he was, what a player, but I think his conduct over the last few years has really tainted him as a person.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think I'd want to have a drink with him. You know,
no, like as in, I look at Messi. Messi just gets on with it.
No, you see, this is what's fascinating. When you start reading about Messi, you start realizing he's not this nice guy that people think he is at all. He's really not. No. No, I'm not. No, he's selfish. No, he is. Yeah, he's brilliant, and people don't mind it because he's good enough. But and people love him, and he's kind and he's thoughtful and he's a lot of that. But he's not this kind of, you know. I tell you what,
he doesn't attract the negativity. Ronaldo.
No, listen. We have to look at these things, and this is something I do have a little bit more experience. When things break in, a story breaks in the media, I find people can very easily take it on its face, and they don't question where this is coming from. Some clubs manage their online presence better than other clubs. Man United, as we touched on earlier, have absolutely no one doing it. I mean, the fact that Jadon Sancho can release that there's no one managing that. You know,
I'm sorry. You have problems with your managers and things like this. Well, if I worked at a supermarket, I wouldn't go to the paper and say my manager upset me.
No, exactly. But it's so much deeper than that. So much deeper than that. How do we all know so much about the Maguire incident, the Scott McTominay incidents? Why do we know so much about how Jadon Sancho feels, about what Anthony's going through? I'm not, as I said to you before, and as I will say hopefully till I die, I will never change my view on this. Innocent till proven guilty is a fundamental right that everyone deserves. However, would you allow a teacher who had that kind of thing going on in the background? Wouldn't you suspend? There are some jobs where you do have to accept you're in the public eye, and therefore maybe. So I'm not getting into that debate, which I think, Scott, we could have a really good debate on in the future. But I think we both agree. However, the reality is Arsenal have a player in exactly the same situation. We have had a player and no one talks about it. And that's the difference.
Yeah. Without talking about it as well, the Greenwood situation was handled dreadfully.
Yeah. Terribly. I mean, that's how badly they're doing. I mean, Greenwood...
I know he's gone to Getafe for a year, and people go, he'll come back. He won't. I believe he'll come back.
He won't. I mean, it's
own again.
You can't. But then I would also say, and I know that... well, I hope you would have some ideas on this, but like there is a point where you look at a player and you say, at his age, are we saying that that's him done for life now, that he can never play football again? Is the crime of which he was neither sentenced nor prosecuted, right? Is it sufficiently bad? Are his opinions and thoughts so distasteful that in the modern culture we can never allow him to be rehabilitated? I think the problem I have is that people are so easily wounded and offended, and
and we're not privy. And apparently there was more. Yeah. Anyway, not going into it, but there was more to that tape that we weren't privy to. That
of course. Or the CPS would have prosecuted him if it was all in that tape that he's in prison. Like we all heard it. Everyone thinks that they know what the law is or what whether the law is an ass or not, that's the system.
So I actually watched Mason Greenwood's Getafe announcement, and when he come out the tunnel, you could see how happy he was, but you could see how scared he is. You know, he looked scared, and you know they do say they reckon he'll come back to United, but he won't because away fans are unforgiving.
Mate, listen, but that's my key question. I would like, it's like a lot of these people. It's like all of the people accused or found guilty of things that are distasteful or wrong. You want them just to disappear.
You want him to go away and never be heard from again. Philip Schofield, that's it. We don't want you anymore. But real life is something has to happen to these people. And then you project and you go, do I really want him to not be able to have a career because he did something I don't really understand? I didn't look into the Greenwood situation. I heard the tape. Everyone did. I know nothing about the details why he wasn't prosecuted. I know nothing about the Anthony. I know only allegations made by the alleged victim. And I hate that so many victims don't like to come forward because they don't think they'll get a fair trial. But at the same time, it's a very difficult crime to prove. And you know, there's all kinds of stuff coming out now. Today, the news was that he'd called a Man United doctor or a member of the medical staff to. Right now, as a club, you've got to know that that's January. You've got to be much more proactive with handling this than waiting till September and then going, oh, yeah, well, I mean, we did go, but it was nothing. And we, you know, it's just a terribly run club.
But then, because sadly, with, you know, we don't know, but with the photos coming out and then with the evidence that they even questioned the doctor at the hospital, at the hotel, it doesn't look good. And it looks
terrible. Because they did. I think I'd like to be able to say I spin anything, right? But give me this, and I'd be like, oh, so he didn't do anything, but he called her a doctor, right? And then there's photographs. Oh God, let me just go back to. Do you know? You'd be like, I don't want to be PR for us anymore.
Yeah, but he could all say she came because she had a stomachache. He could say anything like that.
Yeah, then that's what you're saying, though, isn't it? Then if Man United have to be aware that there's an investigation, a criminal investigation underway, and that investigation will find out what the nature of that contact was. And if they're shown, if Man United is shown to be lying about this, that is impossible to forgive, right?
Just what I remember, just as we came on the live, Pepe's gone.
Is it permanent or is it a loan?
No, he's gone.
Permanently.
It says signed to Turkey. There's no fee, no anything. So that tells me we terminated.
Yeah, I mean, it was the longest. This is what I've said this since summer, especially when people go, how comes we can't get 10 million for Pepe? It's because it's fairly obvious we're going to terminate his contract. You're not, if you go into a shop and a guy goes, look, in 2 weeks, I'm going to put this car outside for free. Do you want to buy it now for £2,000? You'd go,
buy it.
I'll wait, thanks.
You know,
no. The only reason you might buy it is if someone else looked like they want to buy it.
What I can say about Pepe is he had moments of flair and brilliance, but sadly, when Arteta tried to, you know, bring his system in, it was pretty obvious that Pepe couldn't play possession-based football. He wouldn't track back. He lost the ball far too much, and he just couldn't adapt, could he?
He had that one good season. Listen, I agree with what you're saying. I think what it comes down to, there's a really great moment in the All or Nothing documentary where Pep's asking them to remember two sides of the thing. And he's looking at Pepe and he even says to him, don't worry, Pepe, it's not that serious. But Pepe is did not seem to be able to take on the tactical information that Arteta's giving him, which may be what's wrong with which may be why Emile Smith-Rowe's not getting in. He might feel the same way about him.
You know, and you're right. And it just looks at that. It looks like Pepe was lost, didn't it? In his mind, you could see that. He's and I think that portrayed to his body language on the pitch looked like he wasn't into it either, because he did come on and he had some minutes, but he did nothing.
Listen, explain how he had such a mediocre season for Nice. You know, if Pepe's any good at all, it's not just Arteta's fault he hasn't played well. I am sorry that it didn't work out for him. I will always think that was a signing we made to placate a fan base who wanted us to make a big signing. We wanted Zaha. We didn't spend 100 million on him. We ended up with Pepe. Zaha and Pepe. It's the same thing, isn't it? We've all said this season. Comparing Moses Caicedo with Declan Rice, because Moses Caicedo's had like a year and a bit in the Premier League and Declan hasn't missed a game in 4 years. Being Premiership proven means something. We signed Pepe.
Well, you know, when you look at that, we know a bit more about Rice, what he can do, don't we?
Yeah, love him. I'm so thrilled we signed him. I wanted it done. I was never worried he was going to City. We had Lee was on earlier, did a live cast with him, and it was around that time when why didn't we just pay what West Ham wanted? And you go, everyone's such an expert on £100 million transfers, aren't they? Like, I'll tell you why. Because if we'd gone, yeah, all right, we'll give you 100 million, West Ham would have gone, we still want to wait and see if we can get more.
That's what they did, didn't they?
Yeah. The thing is, there was a really good conspiracy theory going around, which I love, which was that Pep got a phone call off Mikel, and Mikel was like, can you just put a bid in for him? Because they think you're coming in for £1 billion, and you're not, are you? And he was like, no.
I know they're friends, but I really don't think Pep would do him a favour like that.
No, I don't think it was necessarily a favour either, but I think on a level, I mean, I don't think that Man City needed to get into a bidding war with us over a player that is not
really need him
at all. I mean, however much I love Declan Rice, I would say Rodri, who has a few years on him, he's a Rolls Royce of a player.
Well, he's not way better. He's just, his levels are a little bit more.
He's had longer to get better. Yeah. He's played under someone like Pep for longer. He's won everything in the game. You've got to give it to that, you know. I mean, last year, all the Man United fans going on about Casemiro, and you go, all right, but Casemiro is no Rodri. I think Tchouaméni would probably be as good as Casemiro in our league. You know, there's a lot of defensive midfielders are amongst the most precious players because all of these formations require so much of it. You know,
I mean, if like Casemiro, great player, but I think this season he's going to seriously get his leg. You know, if they're playing Mount up front, you know, in them positions, I think Casemiro is going to just be flooded.
I'm going to put my Nostradamus hat on and say that watch out for this, but Casemiro will suffer extensive injuries this season, and he will not be playing that much. And I don't think it's because he's really going to be injured. I think he just wants out now. I think that
he's a great player, but you can see his legs not completely there anymore, are they? And you know, and as for Eriksen,
you need to. Well, all right. I'm saying all of that. I do think Amrabat was a great signing, but at the same time, what a mess they made of the Amrabat. Well, they could have signed him
on a loan for 10 million, isn't it?
Oh, I know. And when you do that, you are taking a huge risk and gamble. You know, I mean, does that affect the player? Look at João Felix at Chelsea. Look at when did it ever? It worked for us with Odegaard. That was brilliant. I think we've covered a lot, haven't we, Scott?
Yeah.
I think we've
covered a lot and kind of didn't mention Man United, but we can save the disaster of that for another one.
I would welcome a chance to discuss that because I am currently working on. It takes me quite a while to do. Some videos are really quick. Obviously, you could just get on and talk, and other videos.
I think next time I'll write a few things down and we'll try and keep on track better. But you know,
yeah. But I think it's always great as well when we've had some really great input. Johnny, Lee, Daniel, thank you so much, guys. I think, as much as, part of this is it's a conversation, and I've really enjoyed talking to you about football. You clearly are very wise. I would call you a football expert.
I'm no one,
but
I'm strictly
we're going to have to change the song, aren't we? He knows exactly what we need. Kieran at the back, Gabby in attack. It'd be like, he knows exactly what we need. Timber at the back. I don't know. Everyone.
I'm no football attack. I'm pretty much more a bit of a 4-4-2 type of guy.
Yeah, I would have said the same thing. But whenever I played Football Manager in my younger days, and I was obsessed with that game, I always used to play the diamond. I never played with wingers.
Yeah, you played 3-4-3, didn't you?
No, I didn't. No, I didn't. I played 4-1-2-1-4, 4-1-2-1-2, because I just liked having versatile players that could play, and I like attacking midfield as my favourite position. So now, when you see that, it's quite that. But I'm reading a fantastic book on tactics, which I strongly recommend. Once I've finished it, I'm happy to send it to.
Hey, have you read the David Dean book?
Yeah. I love him.
Brilliant.
Yeah,
brilliant.
Yeah. If you want insights I'm really, because when I first started the channel, I was like, I must do a bit on book reviews because I don't know. Sometimes, but the one at the moment is called The Mixer. It's a story of Premier League tactics from Route One. by Michael Cox, and it's just brilliant. I mean, it goes to
reading well, it's an old book, Brave New World, Huxley.
Yeah, love it. I reread that a couple of years ago as well. It's funny, it was not like I remember it at all. It felt far more poignant, you know?
Yeah.
Like I felt like I've forgotten the main character who lives in the shack in the woods. I've forgotten what he's called now, but I felt like, oh, that's me.
I'm about to read The Catcher in the Rye. I've never read it.
You're not gonna like it. You're not gonna like it.
Yeah, I've heard it's a bit of a weird book.
Unless you've yeah, no, I know you're not a teenage boy, so you're just not going to enjoy it. It's just boring. Yeah, it's basically a whinging teenager. It didn't get me at all. I was in my.
I got a bit. I got like, is it Jack Kerouac with all that beat poet stuff?
Well, the thing is, Kerouac was one of my favorite writers. On the Road was one of my favorite books. Reread that as an adult, and you're like, well, this guy's just a dick.
We should start a book club, Dan.
Yeah, definitely. I at the moment, everything I read is football. So I've got Pep Guardiola. I'm reading. So I'm reading. I just finished My Turn, the autobiography of your Johan Cruyff, and I'm reading a book about Jurgen Klopp, which is brilliantly written. It's a beautifully written. I mean, it's not a football book at all. It's just brilliant. It's about it's like evocative, intelligent, clever, really good stuff. I mean, I've got Ray Parlour's autobiography just finished, and I strongly recommend anyone who likes a bit of a giggle goes for. I
could imagine that. Yeah. Hey, there's one player that goes under the radar. Ray Parlour, mate, was underrated.
Ray Parlour. I was describing the only time on the North Bank on the upper tier of the North Bank upper, I ever felt in danger of dying. And it was when Ray Parlour scored against Valencia, and we were jumping around so much that even though I'm no structural engineer, I was like, this can't be good for it. Do you know what I mean? This is a bit, but you're so wrapped up in, you're like, oh, what a way to go. Do you know what I mean? But
yeah.
No, Ray, the Romfordinho, he was awesome. I mean, like, players who played with him, he shielded the back four. He made Mark Overmars possible, because Mark Overmars, it's funny because nowadays people, especially some of the really good channels I watch, like Tifo IRL, like The Different Knock. I really love watching.
I like The Different Knock. He's a smart lad, isn't he?
Yeah, I really like him. And the guy George V, the Canadian tactician coach, he's obviously done his coaching badges, and I just love listening to them. But I'm not qualified to know, low block and inverted and all this. But when you hear about things like inverted fullback, and you think, well, people have been doing that for a while, But before that, it was the back four we had still needed shielding. And whenever I think of tactics and fans going on about it won't work, this won't work, I know I've mentioned this in a few videos now. December, it was the first 2 weeks of December. It was 1997. I went to Highbury to watch us play Blackburn. We were doing really well in the league, but it started to go a bit wrong. We got beat 3-1 by a very average Blackburn side. And everyone, when I got home and on my way home, I was listening to the radio, and everyone was saying, when is he going to learn you can't play Petit and Vieira in the same midfield? It doesn't work, right?
Yeah, right.
Fast forward to May, and we've won the double. Fast forward to July, and they've won the World Cup. And you go, so when I hear fans saying it will never work, or people like Lee Gunner going, Ramsdale, not good enough. Odegaard, not good enough. Arteta will never get us a title challenge. It's easy to say stupid stuff like that if you're never going to be picked up on it. I get too triggered by some of those people, but the same,
them two invincible players that I think are underrated. I also have to say you got Ray Parlour, Gilberto Silva.
Yeah,
he was a humble player. He just did his job.
This is the thing, isn't it? Like the everyone wants a team full of Galacticos. But the players themselves want players like Makelele. Do you remember him? And like just the kind of players who do the unspectacular work. I'm talking about Makelele, even though he's Chelsea, because there was that point where they sold him to Chelsea because they said he doesn't do anything. And the minute he left, like the team falls apart. There are players like that. I don't think Kai Havertz is that. But I think in our team, we saw a little bit of that when Saliba was out. You know?
Oh, you know, the reason why Partey was so good last season was because of Saliba.
Yeah. He didn't have to, we did not effectively defend the left-hand side of our defence as well as we did the right-hand side. And that is a huge part down to Ben White, Saliba. And I hope people understand when I'm critical of Ben White for the Rashford goal, because I think I'm arguing with people who say it was all down to Kai Havertz. I mean, if you give the ball away on the edge of the opposition area, is it really your fault if they go and score? I mean, shouldn't there have been someone back there?
There's more players on the pitch than just one person, isn't there?
Yeah, but it's easy to blame the one. When Vieira puts that pass astray in the 99 semi-final against Man United, Giggs picks it up, goes past everyone a couple of times and then scores, past Dave Seaman. Like, I don't remember people going, sack Wenger, Vieira's cost us this. I mean, bear in mind, we won nothing that season. You want to talk about bottlers?
Like we said before, people are just too eager. They don't realise that, there's more to it. There is about team management. There's about learning your surroundings. You don't just jump into a team and it's like, oh my God, I know exactly how all these players play. Because you don't.
There's also like Alexis Sanchez, his first day at Manchester United, where he goes, can I go back? Because you suddenly realise that your training facilities aren't as good, or the team isn't feeling quite as good. Human beings in new surroundings, it's a lot of that. Building a team is about building direction and vision, and our players have that at the moment. And
I heard Goldbridge actually talking about United the other day, and he's saying how the toilets leak of piss down the steps.
Yeah, no, that actually I've seen the footage of that.
Yeah,
but I never liked Old Trafford anyway, and it's in basically an industrial centre. And it was like
the place is rusting. There's also rumour that there's mice everywhere.
Yeah, well, it wouldn't surprise me. I mean, I'd hate. I mean, you know what? That's probably true of a lot of grounds, but and apparently the best ground in the Premier League is the one that Tottenham play at, which hasn't been named yet, but I've got some names for it.
But that is a beautiful stadium.
Yeah, and I hear that Beyonce has really made the most of it, so that's good.
I watched a quick video and it was about the Tottenham Stadium, and it was the gentleman from Top Gun, the small chap, not Top Gun, Top Gear, the real.
Yeah, I was going to say Tom Cruise.
Yeah.
Hammond, Hamster Hammond.
And what it was, they were retracting the pitch and watching.
Yeah.
It was about a 15-minute video, and it's fascinating the technology that has gone into.
I know, what a waste, huh? What an absolute waste.
I know, I can't believe they've got
that. Well, I mean, listen, there is so much to be said about Tottenham. It is
At the end of the day, you might have a nice stadium, but you've still got Levy.
And you've still got your fans, I mean, that's just what happened, isn't it? North London is divided between people who look a bit like Spurs fans and are Spurs fans, and people who are not.
I tell you what, I go around, because I go and listen to a few different football podcasts and things like that. And I go to the Tottenham one, and if I ever need a reality check that I'm feeling delusional in myself about what's going on, I feel better after I've watched a Tottenham podcast, because them fans are nuts.
They are nuts. But are you talking about the one with the two brothers that do it? We Are Tottenham or something. This is why I don't think I'll ever do a watch along, because it has been.
No.
I don't get them. Like, I mean, isn't it just if I think I never watch Arsenal watch alongs unless I want to catch people out being dickheads,
I want to watch the game. I don't want to watch somebody watching a game. I don't get it.
Somebody can you imagine watching along with Liga? In fact, when I was in Malaysia and there was no way I could watch the I think we were it was the semi-finals or the quarterfinals of the I think it was Olympiacos in the Europa Cup, and I couldn't get it on telly anywhere. I had to be at the airport before the game finished, so I had a cab waiting, and I was on my phone watching a watch along, and it's the first time I'd ever really come across Liga. And I was just wanted him to tell me what was going on the pitch, and I was being assaulted by, yeah, that's not good enough, yeah, and it's all this, and you just think it's like having a season ticket next to someone you really don't like.
I'd rather watch my cat vomit in a show than watch.
Do you know what I mean? I'd rather watch the highlights later. You know, if watch it on my text or whatever, I don't get it.
I don't get watched along.
But if I ever watch a watch along, it's expressions oozing, you know, like the Tottenham guy. I think he's incredibly funny, but he is more savage about Tottenham than I've ever been, and he's hysterical with it. So I think if you're doing an Arsenal watch along, you've got to know that 95% of your fans are from the teams that don't like us, and I don't want to talk to them. You know, if you don't like Arsenal, that's all right, but I don't want to produce content for you. You know.
I have no desire to watch a watch along. I might chat to the lads in their watch alongs, and then as soon as the game starts, I go off it.
Yeah. And you were saying earlier about AFTV. There are some things I do really love on AFTV. I think James and I think the Tactical Insight show. I can't say I watch as much AFTV as I used to. There was a point as well where for transfer window I would watch. We've got one to leave you with. Who's got? I didn't see this. One to leave with. Are we finally going to win at Goodison? And does Jesus or Eddie start up front? God, I tell you what, Johnny, man. If I had all right, slow down. Give us a moment to reflect. I was just about to say we can pick that question up. All right, let's answer it. Are we finally going to win at Goodison? Yeah. Yeah, and I think we'll play better than we have been, which is the other thing. We haven't been playing that well.
I don't know how Sean Dyche can save Everton.
I don't know how anyone can. I mean, it's a low block, funnel us out to the wings. Hope he's got some tall guys that knock the ball away, and then hopefully hit a long ball up to somebody. You know, but they've got serious problems at Everton. They've got no money. They've messed up. They've had bad investments. Sean Dyche's main thing, and I've heard people slagging off his tactics. We know he's a 4-4-2 type of guy, defensive first, counter attack. What do you want to do? Do you know what I mean? Like, what's your? It's funny when people talk about tactics. Like, you've got all these tactics to pick from. We didn't last season. We couldn't change that much. Yeah, you need a really versatile squad that can change things.
But the problem is, Dyche prides himself on a solid defensive unit. Well, the majority of the defenders at Everton are Championship level.
Yeah, I think everyone at Everton is Championship level. But I will say, I felt like when Crystal Palace sacked Vieira, I took a look at that squad and thought, there isn't anyone in this squad. And I looked at Eze, I looked at Edouard, I looked at, I've forgotten his name now, Elise, and I thought, yeah, all right, but they're not that great. And now
I think with Vieira, he pretty much just set them up to not lose.
I don't know. Listen, again, I'm not technical, but I will say that Vieira, when he came in, he had that really good run, got them to ninth, revitalised them, put players in, gave them confidence. Something had gone wrong. There's no question about that. And they had a 10-game run where it was absurd, their run. They didn't play. Yeah, but they didn't have a shot for two of them. But they were playing teams that were in the top 6. It was like the most ridiculous run of games you could imagine. And I think, look, Hodgson has clearly done a great job at Crystal Palace. But Sean Dyche is not going to do that at Everton.
No. Obviously it might be an age thing, but they seem to respect Hodgson. They probably look at him like a doting grandfather.
There were lots or more like Yoda. Yeah, any of them have watched Star Wars. But the thing is, what's his name? Simon Jordan on Talk Sport. I think... I probably wouldn't say I like him, but I think he talks a lot of sense.
A lot of sense.
I think he talks a lot of sense, and I don't like that. You'd rather that he was just talking off his... there are times where I don't agree with him. I find him a little bit pretentious. I find his choice of vocabulary deliberate. Sometimes when he misuses words a little bit, it kind of... I don't want to sound...
I think with well, I always put it down to this. Simon Jordan likes to use $1,000 word when sometimes a $5 word will do just as good.
Yeah, and that's what. And really clever people don't spend so much time trying to show that they're really clever. So
Yeah.
I'm always a little bit suspicious of that. But yeah, no, I do feel that he has. I do listen to him, and I do like his. He's probably the talk sport presenter that I listen to most often.
Well,
I mean, some of them are just
Well, he's definitely levels above Danny Murphy.
Do you know what? But Danny Murphy, you're gonna. Yeah, I like Danny Murphy, but
I like.
You know,
yeah.
I think Danny Murphy's a great foil for him because he doesn't just agree with him. But no.
I like Gabby.
Yeah, Gabby's good. What about Jason Cundy? You haven't. I mean, when's he gonna realise that's not funny? How long do you have to do the same joke before?
I'm sure that guy's on marching powder, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, he's on something because it's just not.
Yeah.
He's a kid in class that used to come in every day and recite the comedy thing he watched the night before, and you'd be like, "Yeah, I saw it, mate."
That's for Jamie O'Hara. This is his biggest gig since playing in an academy for Tottenham.
Yeah, no, Jamie O'Hara. Don't. I had to look him up. Don't care. Yeah, no.
He wasn't. It was worth remembering. Neither was Jason.
No, of course not. But at least I remembered him playing. I just didn't. Jamie O'Hara, I didn't remember playing. But anyway, so look, it's you have the benefit of already having had a good night's sleep, and I have the benefit of about to have one. Scott, thank you so much. If we'll have a quick catch up before the next one. But if I'm
more organised.
Yeah. Oh, well, listen, I'm trying to do it Thursday 9 o'clock as a regular. But if you are free before, let me know. We'll catch up. But otherwise, if you're up for it, every Thursday night on the regular.
Definitely, mate. And we'll I won't say we'll make it a date, but we'll make it.
We'll do it until we win the league. That's all you have to say.
Yeah. But no, it's been good, mate. It's been emotional.
Absolutely, and thank you to everyone who joined in with brilliant questions. And we, there's a banner, there's a thing that I want to put on the page I haven't yet, which is we don't do this because it's easy. We do this because we thought it would be easy. So that's like the Gooner Channel current motto. No, seriously, you've made it really easy and I've really enjoyed it. So I'm looking forward to doing it again. And as to the rest of you, let us know if you want to join in. And I will see you soon until I see you again. Be lucky.
Be lucky.
Lots of love. Cheers, mate.